In today's video, we're going to be looking at my transfer targets ahead of Game Week 30. We're also going to be discussing my wildcard plans in Game Week 31 and of course discussing who is the best captain for this game week. Now, as always, before we dive into today's video, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe as we are trying to hit 12,500 subscribers by the end of the season. We only need around about 65 people to hit that subscribe button to kind of clear another milestone on this channel. So obviously, if you're new around here, make sure you are liking and subscribing. As you can see, it wasn't the best week overall, to be honest. We had some players that definitely did deliver. We did take a -4. We brought in Bruno Fernandes, Haaland, Gvardiol and Totti. I think the Saturday pretty much wiped us out, to be honest, in terms of that. And of course, getting the captaincy decision incorrect. I decided on the deadline stream that I was going to go for Chris Wood. I just looked at the EO and I thought, you know what, if he does anything and we don't have him captain, it could be quite deadly. So I thought by that way, we've got Bruno, we've got Haaland, the other popular captaincy picks. We are covering ourselves off. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, and Wood, of course, got the lowest points total out of anybody. And I do wish I would have just stuck to my guns and gone with Bruno Fernandes. Obviously, we would have been probably inside the top 10k right now. And I think sometimes, yes, we do play the game a little bit too sensibly, and sometimes I probably need to take a little bit more of a risk, and I feel if I was further back, I probably would have taken that risk. But because we're in such a good position, I probably took the coward way out, tried to just play the effective ownership route. But at the end of the day, Forest did still manage to score 4 goals against Ipswich. Chris Wood very easily could have been involved in any of those 4 goals. We identified that it was, of course, going to be a good game for Nottingham Forest. They were going to score plenty of goals. And we obviously did identify last week, looking at the likes of Hudson-Odoi, Morgan Gibbs-White, Elanga as potential other players to go and pick up. And obviously, Anthony Elanga absolutely smashed it out of the park. So I don't feel too bad. I just think, obviously, I had that gut feeling that Bruno was going to do well. I bought him in. He got a 17-pointer. If we captain him, that could be the difference between us finishing just outside the top 10k and breaking into it this season. So not the best. Obviously, we take a -4, but we knew the Game Week 29 and Game Week 30 were going to be difficult for us. We had to take -4s and obviously not have the best team in line for Game Week 29. We've only fell from 10k to 16k. We're still in a really good position. Of course, we've got the wild card in the back pocket heading into Game Week 31. We've got our bench boost as well and our free hit to attack these doubles and blanks coming up. Looking at how my team is lining up then for Game Week 30 without, of course, making any transfers as of yet. And as you can see, it's a ridiculously good side. I feel like I've got, obviously, the best captaincy options for this week. Haaland or Mohamed Salah. We're going to discuss those a little bit later. The defence is looking ridiculously strong. Obviously, Pickford, not the ideal fixture we want, but it's a goalkeeper. I'm never, ever going to replace a goalkeeper. Of course, we've got Ipswich, Southampton and Leicester. All our back line are playing the bottom sides. If we don't get 3 clean sheets out of them, guys, I really am going to question what is going off. We've got Mbeumo, Kluivert, Bruno, Salah and Rodgers within the midfield. Obviously, we could drop Visser in there or Aina or Totti if we wanted to go down that route. And then, of course, we've got Haaland or Chris Wood. Now, I was looking at the team thinking, where is a player or where is a position I would really like to obviously kind of upgrade? And the only one that I could really see myself investing in was, of course, maybe getting rid of either Visser or Chris Wood this week, and of course potentially bringing in a striker replacement. It probably would mean, as you can come on see, that we would go triple Bournemouth. The other options that I did have was maybe considering dropping Brian Mbeumo and maybe going for a spicy little option. But let's dive into those transfer targets right now and you can see who I've gone for. So before we head into the players, obviously I wanted to outline kind of the landscape of FPL over the next few weeks and obviously discuss what my chip strategy is currently, depending of course on FA Cup results that we will find out the kind of outcomes of, but potentially not what kind of outcomes they're going to have in terms of FPL. I hope that makes sense. So we're going to know what teams will blank in 34, but we still probably won't know where the doubles go into Game Week 30. But the ones that we do know, of course, is Game Week 32. That has been confirmed as a double game week for Crystal Palace and, of course, Newcastle United. So the plan is to wildcard in 31, obviously load it with Newcastle and Palace players, and, of course, then see who will be doubling in Game Week 33 to activate our bench boost on, and then finally in Game Week 34, use the free hit. So that's the plan. in terms of how our team is going to be looking. Of course, if you want to go and check out the amazing kind of calendar that Ben Krellin puts together every single year, there is a link to Fantasy Football Hub's amazing website. Plenty of good stuff already on there, and this is included as well for completely free. You don't even have to sign up. Just head over to the website, head to Ben Krellin's page, and you will find it there. And it's a real lifesaver, honestly. It's a great tool for a lot of people that, obviously like myself, are planning to get ahead over the next few weeks with our wildcard and obviously stuff like that. Moving into the players then that I'm looking at, obviously with the wildcard in mind in Game Week 31, we're probably going to be looking at a 1 game week punt player. And one of them that I have identified potentially could be Evanilson. Ipswich at home, we've seen how leaky they've been. I think they're probably going to go down now. I think this is pretty much it. The bottom 3 is set in stone, and I want to attack these 3 teams as much as possible over the next few weeks. A full 90 minutes for him at the weekend was very, very good to see, of course. No attacking outcome, which isn't ideal. However, when you are facing one of the worst sides, 4 XG conceded in the league, with Bournemouth obviously being quite a potent attack as well, I do feel like he potentially could be a better upgrade than Rob, rather having Chris Wood or, of course, Johan Visser within that lineup. I think if I was to take anybody out, it probably would be Visser for him. I would still like to retain Chris Wood in the side, purely down to that effective ownership and kind of the danger that he could do to our rank, of course, if he were to go off. So it probably would be a case of either benching Mbeumo or Morgan Rogers to fit Evanilson in with, of course, Ipswich at home. I don't mind that, but again, I'm still very hesitant. I'd like to take as many transfers in post-wildcard, kind of just to build a good bank of those to, of course, attack double game weeks or future double game weeks post game week 34 as well. The other option that I was thinking, and this one does excite me a lot, it is going to be Sarr, obviously against Southampton, the worst side in the league, the worst side for XG conceded as well. Bringing him in instead of Brian Mbeumo because they've got Newcastle away. That's not an easy fixture, Newcastle away. Let's just kind of clear that one up. It's not going to be an easy fixture for Brentford. I probably see maybe Brian getting maybe a 2 or a 3-pointer if lucky. Maybe he gets a Gammy penalty decision that goes his way, but I just can't see it being as good as having Sarr against Southampton. As you can see over the past 5 game weeks, obviously he's only played 4 with Crystal Palace blanking in game week 29. He's got himself 3 goals, plenty of shots, plenty of those coming off in the box, and really, really good underlying data. Of course, it is being a little bit more aggressive. It's being very, very attacking, taking out a player that has done me exceptionally well and is a penalty taker, but I feel that move could be worth the gamble. I much prefer this one over, of course, the Evanilson move. I think Sarr's minutes are a lot more secure, and I feel like the fixture against Southampton is even more tasty than the one against Ipswich. So that's the kind of the way that I'm thinking in terms of players that I potentially could look to bring in this week. But I do feel like my brain is telling me just to roll and play it a little bit safe in game week 30, try and build up those transfers. But if I do fancy kind of a 1 game week punt, it is either going to be between Evanilson or Sarr for me. In terms of the big decision though for game week 30, I don't even think it's going to be transfer related. It is actually going to be captaincy. As you saw with my side, I do of course have Mohamed Salah and Erling Haaland, and one of the reasons I bought Erling Haaland in was of course for this Leicester fixture and for the potential future double game weeks in game week 33 and beyond. And one of the big things was in my head was, of course, if we're going to have him, we should probably be captaining him in game week 30 with, of course, them having Leicester. We saw how terrible Leicester were last night against Manchester United. They're a really, really poor side. So, of course, I want to attack that fixture. Liverpool as well in the cup final yesterday were just miles off where they've been throughout large parts of this season. Mohamed Salah, I think somebody put a tweet out saying, Ant and Dec were on telly more than Mohamed Salah was yesterday. Really, really quiet game for him. But, of course, we know what he's been capable of in the Premier League this season. I still feel like most people as well, he will be the consensus pick across the board. And looking at all the models here, of course, we've got Fantasy Football Hub at the top, has him clear by 0.5 points. FPL Review has him level with Erling Haaland, which is very interesting to see. But on Draft Hound, it's got him well clear with 10 predicted points against Everton at home. So I think the sensible pick might still just to be go for Mohamed Salah. Of course, Haaland's ownership is around 30. I imagine it will increase a little bit heading into, of course, game week 30. But I imagine that will probably only peak around maybe 35. I genuinely think it will probably only be around 35. So I think even still, his effective ownership will be below 100, whereas Mohamed Salah's is, of course, going to be plus 100. If he does anything in that game and we've not got him captain and Haaland blanked, then we're going to be left in a very, very difficult position. Of course, if we look at how Haaland has been scoring in recent weeks and in terms of double-digit hauls, it's not making for pretty reading compared to Mohamed Salah, and it's not a bad fixture for Liverpool as well. Everton at home, I think they'll be right up for it, of course, after being knocked out of the Carabao Cup, knocked out of the Champions League. They will want a response from this game and they will want to punish one of their local rivals. So I do feel like Mohamed Salah is still going to be the captain choice for me, purely down to that fear of effective ownership, which is probably not the best way to play the game, but at times it is kind of the way that you just have to see the world. Haaland will still get me points, whereas if I didn't captain Salah and he did anything, I'm going to start, losing rank, taking red arrows. So I think maybe the sensible play is captain Salah, and just because we've got Erling Haaland, we're still going to be in a pretty decent position. As you can see there, we do have Sarr on the Draft Hound one. Obviously, he was the player that we did look at in the last section discussing our potential transfer targets. So I find that really interesting that he's fancied so high up with a 6.1 predicted points. I want to see how he compares in other ones as well. But like I said, that one game week punt at 3.7%, he could be the differential that could cover off us just sticking with Salah decision, having Sarr, and if he explodes in that game, it could be a delicious, delectable little transfer. But let's go and see how the team is going to be lining up for game week 30 with, of course, the transfers that we've just gone through there, and of course my plans going further forward in future weeks. Okay, wasting no time, let's take a look at how the team potentially could line up ahead of game week 30 then. If we were to bring in Sarr, and you know what? That just looks absolutely ridiculous, doesn't it? What a team that is. The backline, absolutely purring. We've got a midfield, arguably one of the most informed players in Bruno Fernandes. We've got Mohamed Salah. We've got Kluivert against Ipswich. Sarr against Southampton. Not a bad fixture for Morgan Rogers against Brighton. I feel it probably would be quite a tight toss-up, should I say, between him, Aina, Visser and Totti, really, to start in that starting 11. So yeah, it probably would go off maybe predicted points or just purely down to a gut feel. Chris Wood is in there. Ideally not the best fixture, but he's not really been doing it in recent weeks. But again, it is more purely down to those effective ownership. And obviously we spoke about Erling Haaland and obviously why we want him, and of course giving us that potential captaincy appeal. Then if we were to head into game week 31, as you can see, we are planning on wildcarding in this game week because the team is starting to look a mess. Of course, we've only got 2 Crystal Palace players. We've got no Newcastle players heading into this game week either. So we would be activating that wildcard button anyway, regardless. So like I said, Sarr would just be pretty much a 1-week punt, but he still might make it into the wildcard team as well with Brighton. Then, of course, if we head into game week 32, he then, of course, has the double of Manchester City and Newcastle away. Not the best double, but still, nevertheless, a double. And Crystal Palace at the moment are absolutely flying. I think if the season started 8 game weeks in, they'd be sat within the top 4. That's how good a second half of the season Glasner is having with this Crystal Palace side. So, yeah, I definitely think having Sarr, Munoz, and maybe even Mateta Crystal Palace triple up or double up is probably going to be the play over the next few weeks, or with our wild card as well. In terms of if we were to do absolutely nothing, I still think that team looks pretty decent, to be honest. Again, we have calls for anybody to be starting ahead of Mbeumo, Rogers or Wood on the bench, with all pretty decent fixtures there. Of course, then we'd head into game week 31, and again, we would just be activating that wildcard and getting ourselves out of this with a new team as well. The one player that I'm going to be watching very, very keenly over the next few weeks is Erling Haaland, because if you watched my wildcard draft yesterday, you can build a mean draft that targets a lot of the doubles in game week 33 without Erling Haaland, and I do think he might be one of those players that does, of course, make way, because as I've said throughout large parts of this season, and why I played the game without him at the start, was I don't think he's actually got a lot of value in him this season, to be honest. Unless you captain him every single week, he is not going to be a decent value pickup for that price point. He's going to be needed to score double-digit hauls every single week. And right now, him and Manchester City are not at those levels. So he might be a player that sticks in it for the next few weeks, but of course does come out in game week 31 on our wild card. That, of course, is going to be my transfer targets ahead of game week 30. If you do have any questions about your team as well, get them in, as we'll try to answer as many as we possibly can. But thank you for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 30.